Hello, everybody, and welcome to REVA's Electrifying News August 2026 edition. With me, as always, my two co-hosts, Mr. Ian Graham, joining us from a undisclosed fuzzy location somewhere. How you doing today, Ian?
Not too bad. I'm a bit tuckered out and tired from 4 days of Rush events
Oh, yeah.
between Rush concerts and playing for All Star Band and meeting the drummer on Saturday, this past Saturday. She's awesome.
Yeah, I saw some of the posts that you put on Facebook, so that
Yeah,
must have been fun.
I'm not in a rush right now.
Good, good. Also with us, as per usual, Mr. Eric Stevens from Listowel. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Mark.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Ian, let's get the deck loaded, and we'll talk some EV news this month.
All right. So the first one, this is going to be an interesting with this podcast because um, we're not just going to be talking electric cars and also the expansion that we're seeing in Canada, but getting into some of the renewable aspects of this as well. But they're all, kind of work together.
Yeah, so we'll kind of lump this together because a couple provinces have announced some additional funding to install chargers. New Brunswick, I'm going to start with New Brunswick a little bit. I mean, they're obviously one of the lower populated provinces here in Canada, but also an area where there's sometimes a little bit of gaps in the charging network. But this is a great to see that they're investing into this infrastructure and they're adding, 16 DC fast charging sites for a total of 29 charging ports, basically, is what they're adding. But that'll help plug a lot of the gaps that are in the province today and help bridge that gap for those people that are trying to go from Quebec to Nova Scotia or even visit the province of New Brunswick itself. So,
Hmm.
um, it's a great addition. The BC Hydro one, this is an interesting one because this is a massive expansion they're saying to do by 2035. They're going from 917 ports to 3,500 by 2035 in the next 9 years. So BC's planning to substantially grow their EV charging network as well too. And obviously, we've talked about this many times on this that BC has one of the highest uptakes for EV vehicle ownership and sales today, and so this makes sense to be able to bridge that, fill in that network and meet those demands for people there as well too. And there are a lot of mountainous communities there and stuff like that too. It gives that reassurance for people traveling through the mountains and the Rockies to be able to do that. And they're also looking to expand and go all the way to 400 kilowatt type chargers. So that'd be really good too.
Hmm.
What's great here is that BC has been a leader in EV charging for a while. Their provincial utility has gotten on board with this plan early in the game, and they've had some upgrades, and they've continued to push out excellent EV spaced chargers throughout the province. So great to see that they're continuing this and not letting down, and just adding more as it goes along. As Eric mentioned, New Brunswick's been a little bit of a lacquer when it comes to EV charging, but they do have a provincial utility as well that has their own chargers as well. And of course, they've got third-party chargers out there as well. So we also had one of our members, Kirk, took his Audi out to the East Coast, and he found that New Brunswick, as he was passing through, had the charger infrastructure he required on his trip. But there are, as Eric mentioned, a few soft spots that hopefully this will fill up.
Hmm. And speaking of long trips and soft spots, we drove to Cochrane, which is the northernmost point by road in Ontario to go see the polar bears. And the only charger was, and it wasn't just one, it was actually two of them, was at the hotel that we stayed at. And funny enough, of all people up there that night was Don Miller from the London EV group. I couldn't believe like to run into him as well. But anyways, we were both talking about the fact like, where is that aspect of things with Ontario? They, on northern parts, they really need to kind of get a little bit more on top of that. And that being said, we drove back to Espanola, but we stopped in Timmins, charged at a Canadian Tire Flow there. But then on the way between Timmins and Espanola, we came across a charger in a park, which was part of the Ontario government because it had the Ontario kind of plates on it. And I got thinking, Canada, and for that matter, the provinces, whether it's Flow or Ivy or whoever it is, just do this. I would much rather see our taxpayer dollars go to getting these networks in place. And because where are they going to lose? We still pay for the electricity to charge our cars. And so I can see how, business wise, it would go back into the pot, so to speak. But I just think it would be, I don't know if it'd be necessarily better managed, but I'm just kind of looking at just get it done.
Mhm.
But with New Brunswick, that's a very good point because that was always one province that we were like, it's not quite as good as it should be, and it's great to see this. And of course, BC, man, they're rocking it
Mhm.
big time.
Yeah, I agree with there, Ian. I think with Ivy being owned by OPG and Hydro One, which are predominantly provincially owned organizations,
Mm-hmm.
I could see the Ontario government pumping some money into there just to with some criteria to put some infrastructure in to serve some of these underserved markets. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right. Well, just to the point from going to chargers, we got a couple of articles about renewables, and was bringing up. I kind of look at it as interesting with because I go to Mexico, but I found it interesting. Mexico is really with the new administration with Claudia Sheinbaum is really pushing to get more renewables going in Mexico, and it makes total sense not only for solar but actually for wind as well. Now, it's interesting. The biggest hurdles that they're having is the aging transmission grid. That's going to make things a little more complex because you're going to have to upgrade this as well. That being said, that's where Mexico is also looking more for the private investment. In the video that we have with this article, there are a couple. One guy is doing the solar installation aspect of it, and he says, the next day they could call you up and like, we need this, we need that for paperwork and everything this way, and it's sort of like you're at their mercy suddenly having to do these things. But I found it interesting. Like the previous administration, they didn't do anything electrical development wise for any of this stuff. And Mexico's growing, the economy's growing, and so hopefully you got to keep up with this stuff. And Claudia, she seems to be really on the ball with a lot of this.
yeah, now they have a president that has a science background
Yes.
and understands some of this stuff. And yeah, as the article alludes to, that Mexico has undergone billions of underinvestment for such a long time, and their infrastructure is now coming to bear. And you talk about power transmission as a potential bottleneck, but it's also clean energy actually has and using a diversified grid methodology has the opportunity to solve some of those problems without huge investments in power transmission. Because now
Mm-hmm.
you can put these solar sites and these wind sites in locations where the demand is needed and closer to where the demand is needed. And you can reduce the load on some of the more traditional high power transmission locations. So, with the right targeted investments and things like that, I think this is a great potential. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you also talk about, and the article talks about, some of the bureaucracy of Mexico, and yes, I've encountered that firsthand in some of the my business dealings there as well too. When we were moving stuff from Mexico City to Monterey, where it was easier for us to buy stuff from the U.S. than it was from vendors in Mexico City, simply because of the interstate rules in Mexico were so difficult to deal with. So there's certainly some barriers within Mexico that have a greater business issue to deal with for projects like these. So and hopefully that can be resolved and dealt with as well too.
Mm-hmm.
I like that the new government has put a goal in mind for renewables in this article, indicating they'd like to get up to 10% as a goal to reach. And it's always good to have goals, put them on the books so you can work towards them, not just install projects here and there and hope for the best. Try to place those goals out there and try to have them realistic. And it's good to see because, of course, all of us, Canadians included, we want to move towards more renewables. We want to move that percentage higher in each of our countries, and it's good to see that Mexico is at least now moving in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So then we have the government of Canada now also talking. And here I was just saying, I wish the government would just do something for the EV charging, just do it. And here we go. We do have something along this line. But then also the big part is education, which I've heard friends, discuss that with me, that they always feel that the education aspect is still kind of lacking. It's based on word of mouth. My neighbor drives an EV and I've learned from him about these different things. But anyways, this is great to see with the funding.
Yeah, another almost $11 million added to the EV charging infrastructure and education. Most of it going to the charging infrastructure. I believe it's like 8.9 million, and then 2 million to the education. But again, we're just kind of filling in here. A good majority of this money has been awarded to Hydro-Quebec, another province that has charging really locked down pretty well. Everywhere you go in Quebec, there's a pretty good chance that you've got chargers around you that are up and running and in the right location. So hats off to Quebec. So they're getting another 100 level threes to the existing sites and locations that are already there. So again, they're adding infrastructure so that there's less wait time at a charger. You're not just having one or two; you're getting four. So this is a great step, and it shows that EV adoption is progressing because the government is tracking these. The hydro company is tracking how much their assets are being used, and they're starting to notice that, hey, one or two isn't cutting it anymore. We've got more EVs on the road that are charging up. We need to add to those current sites more chargers. So this is great news, and it's a good investment for Canada. Again, if they can maintain the uptime of these, Quebec has done a pretty good job, but of course we need to have those. I guess those background checks in place that we understand that maintenance is a prime concern when it comes to EV infrastructure. And another thing that this is working on is those is the education side of things about residential charging. Something that people need to keep an eye on to understand. That's really the last. I guess the last great jump for EV adoption is if you don't have your own driveway or charge area and have to rely on something that's community based or condo based or whatever. Those are things that we have to keep in mind. And I think again, this is something that we need to continually top up and keep on this as the EV adoption continues and grows.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is a great announcement, and every year it seems like the government of Canada launches a new project which is helping to invest the installation of EV charging infrastructure. But one thing I've noticed is that with every year this round of funding comes out, there seems to be learnings from the past and stuff like that as well too. Last year there was some metrics being tied to EV uptime and reliability and maintenance, being tied to the funding and stuff like that. And now we're seeing also now education and awareness projects that are going towards this as well. So I think this is a step in the right direction. I think the government is learning as it's going along, and it continues to fund and invest in EV charging infrastructure where it's needed and where people are buying electric cars and where the demand is. So it's again, good step in the evolution and keeping things moving.
Yeah. I'd be curious to know with the education awareness projects, where is that going to be like a more of a public-based type of forum, or would that actually maybe involve dealers as well, helping to train sales staff to understand this a lot better as well? So I'm curious where that might be going. But 100 level three, it sounds like quite a bit actually when we're getting into that. And It is, and it just makes the whole idea of a road trip that much more feasible with everything. So we just got to get more North Ontario for the polar bears. All right. So this article came out this weekend, and the reason I'm bringing this article up is that I think Canada, we have a huge, huge opportunity with something very similar to this, with what is happening in Australia and UK. And so Australia, they started putting subsidies for solar, and people jumped right on board. And it's now 41% of their homes have solar. And they get surges in the grid regularly that basically the system operators have a good problem, and more power than you know what to do with, which then basically with Australia, you could get a message saying, hey, the electricity now for the next 3 hours is free. So, go do your laundry, go charge your car, anything like this, because, it's falling below wholesale prices. And it's actually, to Eric's point about, with solar with Mexico, but being able to put things into certain places, that makes a lot more sense. Rooftop solar is cheaper than building new generation of whether that be nuclear, etc. So it makes a lot of sense with that too. Now, on the UK side of things, this is an area that there was sort of 2 points on this that I thought were really interesting. One was their level of emissions is down to the level that it was in 1872. Like they've really become aggressive with their emissions aspect. And now, because of climate change, UK is having some of the sunniest years. And the solar aspect is just pushing more renewables for them to do that. So that was kind of surprising to see, because we always think of the UK as this country that is cloudy, rain, and everything that way, but it's changed because of climate change. As for Canada, I just hope that Canada, starts looking at some of these projects and what's happening, and then kind of can follow suit, especially for the province of Alberta, because that is one of the top provinces for solar and wind. That they could really get on board with something like this. So, is Canada missing out? I think so, to a point. But I also feel that, if they start looking at more of this stuff economically, it makes a lot more sense too.
Yeah, this is. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Eric.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. I mean, I get, yes, the renewable uptake is pushing a lot of this power, and it encourages, when people see that, hey, I can get power, somewhat for free anyway, or versus having to idle some of these, a wind turbine or something to that effect. To some extent that kind of happens in Ontario today as well too. In the commercial scale, there is sometimes the wholesale price of electricity can actually turn negative sometimes as well too, but even though it's been pretty rare the last little while. But one thing that caught my interest there, Ian, is when you talked about how people can get a notification on their smartphone that their hydro rates can drop and stuff like that. That seems kind of interesting now, because now you're talking about more dynamic pricing models and more options to people to sit there and say, hey, under these circumstances, power is going to be a lot cheaper on these days. And that opens up the opportunities to, instead of the fixed rates that we use today, you could probably still have a fixed rate scheme, but then have these moments where you send out a notification, or you could opt into a program where, hey, we'll tell you when the rates are going to be super cheap for you, and if you need to charge your car or use something high power. I think that there's some big applications to that as well too, for grid applications, or even send a message to charging infrastructure that's interconnected, and to tell people, hey, start charging cars automatically during that time. So I think there's a lot of potential here with new technologies that are out today to do this.
Definitely is, and I feel that Canada and Ontario is lacking a little bit in this area. I would love to see some more builders get on board with this to say, you know what, you have a south-facing roof. in your new build. For X amount dollars extra, we will put solar on the roof and we will put a power wall or power wall equivalent in your basement for battery storage. I think a lot of home buyers could be easily convinced if these packages were readily available from builders and builders were knowledgeable about south-facing roofs and what could be done with new builds. And of course, if you've got those batteries in basements, they're all connected now to the internet. And as Eric mentioned, they could be notified that there's extra power available, and they could fill up those batteries during different times of the day automatically based on a rate dropping to a certain amount. Uh, so this solar roof with a new build and a battery added could be very advantageous to the communities that get involved with this because now you've got a virtual power wall that can also participate and help with evening out the sharp curves that they occur for what's available in the grid and what needs to be there. So would like to see this expanded upon as time goes along.
Hmm. For sure. Well, we'll keep crossing our fingers. There's a lot of space on manufacturing and all that as well for the solar roofs. So lots to contribute that way. Alrighty. This is exciting to see. I kind of like the name as well.
Yeah, this is one of the hotly anticipated vehicles that people have been talking about. And they had some sort of big news. It's kind of been the eyedropper of news that's been coming out of Ford as they've been slowly trickling out news about their new low-cost electric truck. Um, Now, they've released a bunch of more information this time about the vehicle and including the starting price here in Canada of 42,690. They've always been advertising the under 30,000 price tag in the US, and it's going to be called the Ford Fathom. And they came out and mentioned that the interior cabin space of the vehicle is going to have similar passenger space to a Toyota RAV4, slightly better. So it still have good passenger space. And part of the reason why they called it a Fathom, I guess, is it's equivalent to like the arms reach out in space, which is roughly about 6 feet, and people are hypothesizing that's going to be about the size of the pickup bed for this as well too. What's going to be interesting though is that the rumors are that the initial battery, the small battery for this will be LFP. Ford has said that, but it'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of 50-ish kilowatt hours. And so I estimated the base truck of this would probably only about 300 kilometers of range, but that still could be a very good vehicle for a pretty wide market. But they did mention there'll be larger battery options available and all-wheel drive available as well too. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes. And there's been a plethora of new small electric trucks entering the market. Uh, one we talked about in a previous show about Slate, which is unfortunately not coming to Canada, at least not yet, anyway. And there's also the Tello truck, which I is more expensive, but is an even more compact truck, but has a pretty impressive mid-gate in it that it still allows it to fit, 4x8 sheets of plywood and stuff like that. But it'd be priced a bit higher, but be a much more capable vehicle with a 106 kilowatt hour battery pack and over 500 kilometers of range. There's a whole lot of new options coming up that, in my opinion, are a little more creative than your standard half-ton pickup trucks. And it'll be interesting to see how that hits the market coming forward. So,
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how well it does in the market. But I think as we've trumpeted before on this show, the more options out there, the different vehicle types, the better. Because you do have some people that would love to have a regional EV that they could pull up to their local home hardware and put some stuff in it for gardening or for construction at home or a project. And having a 6 foot bed or even a 4 foot bed would be advantageous for those people that, do weekend projects and need something to haul that stuff around. It would be interesting to see what the uptake of Canadians would be on a smaller pickup like this. And I guess we're going to be able to see.
Hmm. I can see, especially for local contractors, and to your point about like showing up at Home Hardware and that, and this is a pretty reasonable price for them. And especially if they're a local contractor, not going much farther than, like you said, Eric, maybe 300 kilometers. And for this price, and then having, charging at home, it's going to be, really economically beneficial for them that way on this. So, yeah, I'm curious to see where this is going to turn out. And again, it's just one more vehicle option in the market that's giving consumers a choice for this. And yeah, I don't know. Well, until we see it, we'll have to wait and see. Yeah. All right. Canadians say they'll buy cheaper Chinese EVs as tariffs drop, and now we have the threat of it's sort of the back and forth.
Yeah, I think this is kind of on the education front of EVs. That China, with its new deal that it has with Canada, with for 49,000 vehicles in the first year and ramping up to 70,000 over 5 years. I think Canadians have received a lot of information about Chinese vehicles and their competitiveness in the market, as well as their build quality, based on what you're able to see out there. And there's a ton of articles about Chinese vehicles and how they are performing and have performed in the market. And they're in great stature with the world community.
Mhm.
So I think this is part of education where we're getting fed this information over time, since, of course, our tariffs with China had changed dramatically, and now people are starting to look into it, start to figure it out, and there's I guess, stepping up of people saying, you know what, I would consider a Chinese vehicle over the past 3 years, and it's gone dramatically from a 40% said they would only be interested. And then the year after it was about 50%, and now we're at 60% that said that they would not have an issue buying a Chinese vehicle. So I think that as this goes along and as the first true Chinese vehicles arrive in Canada that are names that we're unfamiliar with, I think that this education process will continue, and we will have the ability to compare some of these vehicles, look at them, and I think these Chinese vehicles will only go up in stature in the minds of Canadians as they start to arrive. But again, I think this is education, and I think this is Canadians getting exposed to what the real information is on Chinese EVs.
Mhm.
Yeah, fully agree with everything you say, Mark. And the information that we're getting on how good Chinese EVs are and the potential of how affordable they are as well too. And people see that, and in combination looking at the gas pumps today and stuff like that, they're going, there's lots of people who I think do want to get an EV, but they're still getting sticker shock by $60,000 type vehicles. So this is a great potential for things to happen there, and there might even be an element to this now with some of the traditional manufacturers pausing some of their investments in Canada. Honda, General Motors, Ford have all mentioned that they're temporarily pausing some investments in manufacturing in Canada as well. And so a lot of Canadians are like, well, if these guys are not going to be building cars here, maybe we should look at this. And there's been an interest for some Chinese manufacturers to potentially either sourcing materials and batteries from Canada, possibly even setting up an assembly plant here. So that has a lot of it, that certainly drives some interest amongst Canadians, and it will be interesting to see going forward, because now the Unifor contract negotiations are starting up right now, and Unifor has picked General Motors as their target for this year. It'll be interesting to see how those negotiations play out and what that means for manufacturing in Ontario for car makers and stuff as well going forward. So a lot of pieces in motion right now, I think, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I just saw that about Unifor today. Actually, I was out for lunch and saw that up on the television. Yeah, so it'll be interesting. The one other thing with the Chinese vehicles, I think as well, is that because again, going to Mexico, BYD has already set up shop there. And that's not just Mexicans that are seeing it. It's also a lot of the Canadians who go down and are seeing these vehicles and checking them out.
Mhm.
I've had friends who are down there and they've gone test drives with them. But then I also had a friend who was in China for a couple of weeks, and I met someone who, through a friend who had been there for over a month, and they all came and said, like, no, these cars are amazing. They got a real kind of like slickness to them. The price is right. They got some great technology in it as well. And once those cars are here, I think the big question for a lot of people will always be our Canadian winters and how will they, handle this. But that being said, I did talk to a lady from China who mentioned that their winters over there can also be, difficult as well. So we'll see what once this starts coming over and the reviews come in, and I'm sure there's going to be like a BYD Canadian group, so to speak, and you'll hear lots of stuff about it there. All right, so that would be our show for today.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to shout outs. And Ian, I'm sure you've got a shout out about something. So we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, first off, to the hotel in Cochrane, Westway, they were great with the two chargers, and it was funny. There was four of us at one point, kind of at the charger, so to speak. Like I was already kind of done up, but then another Tesla Model Y showed up. Don had a Model Y, and then a Hyundai Ioniq 5 as well. So. Just kind of showing like, no, we need to get more of these things. And I had a great chat with some guys who work on the train. And they were asking me some really pretty good questions about some of this stuff as well. And I made them cry a little bit when I told them that it costs about $7 to $8 for 500 kilometers compared to their trucks that they drive. So anyways, it was fun on that respect.
Very good. Eric?
Yeah. Maybe I'll talk a little bit and a shout out to the people at Darlington Provincial Park. I was out there, very clean, very well maintained provincial park there. Towed my trailer out there with my Blazer EV and went camping there for a little bit. And also on the way there, stopped at a supercharger in Orangeville and got lots of questions by the owners there about me charging there and pulling a trailer and stuff like that as well. So it was a good trip overall and good experience, and it worked out very well. So I'm happy with how things are performing and happy how it's going.
Excellent, excellent.
Mhm.
I too have been questioned recently in the past few weeks from some contractors in my area. I'm in a bit of a construction area when it comes to the home area, and again, some people just are not aware that it costs about $8, $9 to fill their car to get 500
Yeah,
kilometers worth of range. And when you say that, their mouths, kind of drop, especially with prices as we've seen fluctuating today.
Yeah.
So I'm sure some of our members out there have stories too. If you have some, put them in the comments. Let us know
yeah,
what you found out there. But another thing I'd like to do is let people know that our annual National Drive Electric Month event is coming up October the 3rd. It's a Saturday. If I'd like to certainly thank people that have already pre-registered for free from the website. You can still do it. I will put the link in the notes below that you can click on and sign up for a free exhibiting your vehicle with us. And would love to see you out there at I think it's our 12th annual this year. So right up there. Certainly would love to see everybody out there, and it's always a good time.
yeah.
With that said, we'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. If you haven't already, please give us a thumbs up on the video. That helps us out. Press that subscribe, and you'll be notified whenever these go live, and you'll get advanced notification. And we would appreciate that as well. Thanks so much, everyone. Tune in next month and we'll get together and find out what's happening in Waterloo region.